Welcome back to Fighters Drinking Coffee. Today, we have a special guest with us. We have Raf Esparza of the Grappling Hour podcast, as well as the Bullpen News, and a bunch of other stuff that he also commentates or produces for. Raf, go ahead and, tell us about what else you've been into. You were just in San Diego, right?
Yes, sir.
For Subversive, is that correct?
Not Subversive. This is my weekend off. We just did Subversive a week ago. So I usually try to plan hard work and then fun. So my fun this weekend was going down to San Diego for the WWE Survivor Series, aka the original quintet. So I went to go enjoy myself, go get drunk with some friends, and then I actually went to go train at my buddy Bobby Winther's new gym called Teams MMA. And Bobby Winther is a top 16 athlete in ADCC trials. I think he did it twice, beat up AJ Aga's arm. So happy about that. And then I also went to Keenan and Miha's Legion Jiu-Jitsu for their open mat on Sundays. And it was a fun open mat, but I'm on vacation mode. And it is wild when you're on vacation mode and it is another Sunday to these people and they are not on vacation mode. So nobody was being a dick or anything, but it was just like, oh, right, pace. We should go a little bit faster. Okay, got it.
They're on war mode.
Yeah, you were showing up, chilling. You'd been watching Survivor Series the night before, I assume. So I imagine that was a vastly different pace than the people that were showing up to work, basically.
The other thing is this, it's not without its own character study. I saw their transitions. They're not bad. A lot of these guys are starting to train now. So you see a lot of these pro wrestlers dabbling in a little bit of jiu-jitsu, or they've been martial artists and they kind of use transitions that are very jiu-jitsu based. So I was like pointing it out to my friends, and I went with one civilian, meaning one person who doesn't train jiu-jitsu, and my other buddy who is a pretty solid MMA fighter named Brady. And, we're all shooting the shit. And we love telling the civilian, like, oh my God, that's De La Riva. You don't even know what that is. It's so dope. They're doing this.
Who was the winner of Survivor Series this year? Who came out on top? I didn't watch it, so we're going to spoil this for everyone else.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, and I have a big belief that for pro wrestling, because it's every single week in the world, there is no such thing as a spoiler. You watched it or you didn't. The big joke that happened is I'm from LA and I wear that very proudly. So I was wearing a Dodgers hat as I was going to Petco Park. And for those of you who are not baseball folks, maybe a dick move, maybe not. I don't know. I'm just a fan happening to wear a hat that might be the world champions. No big deal. And they made a joke. Dom Mysterio, who is the son of Rey Mysterio, has become this incredible heel. And there's always been this kind of joke because they did a custody of Dom Mysterio match between him and Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero was the true father of Dominic Mysterio. And they run with it, and Dom Mysterio has really embraced this Eddie Guerrero thing. But he beat John Cena in one of his last two matches. So John Cena's on his exit tour. And the joke that was written was, Dom Mysterio was the first person to win a championship inside Petco Park. And that's a pretty devastatingly sad joke for the Padres who have never won a championship. And I laughed pretty hard at it.
Especially while wearing your Dodgers hat.
I went to several pro Padres bars proudly warning it. And I was like, I have no issues here. I am a true heel at heart. So I play a babyface host when I need to, but yeah, it was a lot of fun, man.
That's great, man. Do you have any questions on Survivor Series, Scott?
I do not have any questions on Survivor Series. Although I've taken like a 15-year hiatus from pro wrestling. and I think I'm about to get back into it. After the Attitude Era, DX, Shawn Michaels, all those dudes, when that sort of ended, that was when I trailed off.
Mm.
You know, I grew up on those dudes, and to me, that was like the golden age of wrestling. Raf, you tell me what I've missed in the last 50 years, but I have cousins and friends who never quit the game.
Mm.
They're still diehards, and they're constantly talking to me about it, and it still looks like the most fun thing ever, so I think it's time that I get back into it.
You know, man, here's the good news. You can jump back in and it's not a problem. The thing I want to make sure I say on my side is this. You might have left wrestling, but wrestling didn't leave you, and here's why. Everything is wrestling. The president of the United States is a WWE Hall of Famer who is in a major angle. Politics is wrestling now. It's just people cutting promos. They don't fix anything. They're just like, hey, I'm going to see you at November 4th this year at the ballot box. It's like, okay. And then from my perspective, one of the reasons why I go, aside from wanting to go drink and have fun, I'm taking notes the whole time. And I'm always watching to see what the production does. And so what I really like about the WWE is that they are usually trying out new stuff production wise that makes me go, oh, that's kind of cool. So like for Subversive, one of the things that I found out was at WrestleMania, they have this like fan experience where you pay like $200-300 to go. And a lot of it's signings, you go meet people. That stuff doesn't really interest me. But there were so many people who were showing me videos of their kids who paid to make a WWE walkout. Now that to me was like, wait, if I was 10 years old and you could pay for me to go make a walkout, I would have eaten that up. And I realized that Subversive, we were this past year at a church that had a giant big screen TV. So what I said was, I was like, people pay for this elsewhere. We should use this as an upcharge and teach people how to make pro wrestling-esque entrances, or at the very least, how to hold a mark. Because most people, when they have a super fight, they just get nervous and they just run on out there. They don't connect with the audience. There was another person who I was talking to over the weekend, an MMA fighter, who goes, oh, that's kind of cute that you're going to like WWE. And I was like, mm-hmm. And he goes, why are you saying it like that? I was like, well, you do know how many people are going to be there. And he's like, no. And I go, 46,000 people. And he's like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, cool. You do recognize that no matter how good you get at MMA, 46,000 people will not watch you fight. And
What did he say?
What? He was like, oh, damn. And I told him, I'm like, it's the real truth of it. You're fighting for real, but this staged or choreographed thing or predetermined thing has more people. And a real smart person should be asking themselves, well, why? And he was like, I mean, I like it. It's just wild. And I told him, I'm like, dude, the only stadiums that have really happened for MMA are, I want to say, Australia at the Marvel, where I think Izzy fought a couple times. And that's about it. Everything is mostly arenas, and they charge really well for these prices for UFC that make money. But we're talking stadiums with upwards. I want to say at WrestleMania when I went, it was like 60,000 per day for 2 days. So if you're smart and you're looking at it as a sports fan or as a business guy, you have to acknowledge, wow, that's impressive. And two, if you really want to do something bigger for the sport, you have to say, like, how are they getting people there? And what are they doing? So from get-go, start to finish, what's the fan experience like? What are the seats like? What is the event pacing like? How many commercials do they have? What's the lighting like? What's the staging like? So literally when I go, my friends probably get annoyed at me just being like, that drone looks so cool. Look at it. Oh, that shot's so good. So like I nerd out on all that stuff.
You're studying the craft.
Trying to, man. I do it everywhere that I go. So even like if my wife takes me to a comedy show or we go to the theater, all I'm ever thinking about is how can we do it on a budget? Because, jiu-jitsu don't got money like that. But I'm always thinking like, how do we elevate this? Because you guys and I know the way that people dedicate themselves in this sport, they're killing themselves, and we're not making nowhere near the money that other sports do. So you can do one of two things about it. You can bitch about it, which I do plenty, but Subversive has been the area where I can say, how do I leave a better imprint for it? Or how do I help in my small way to say, all right, presentation. I don't have the money of ADCC, but I can teach these guys how to have a better interview. I can nudge them a certain way. I can roast them. I know how to be funny with people. Like, there are small little things that you can do and that I see a lot of small organizations do. But it's like, dude, if you look at the way that our athletes kill themselves versus, and no disrespect to other sports, but like a golfer, I mean, it's cool. Respect to those people who do golf and who are good at it. I don't think it's a better sport than what we do.
I'd agree with that. And I think you have a really good, you're really touching on something there with like the fan experience, um, with how the fan experience, the spectacle, all of that is such a big part of why people enjoy and uh go to WWE and other pro wrestling events. I'm not as familiar with the other ones, but I know AEW's been, kind of climbing up and stuff like that. Um, but the spectacle, and like you're talking about the crowd interaction, and you've seen people do this in the UFC, right? We've seen Conor McGregor, like that was a very similar thing, and that's what really helped him grow as a brand, as a fighter. Colby Covington was a big one. He did like a very like textbook heel turn, right? When he uh did that big he turned on Trump mode, and like that kind of created this character, this like larger than life character that wasn't really, well, he says like that's not who Colby Covington is, but he knew that, and he's talked about this, where like creating this heel is what saved his career, and probably it's the whole reason he still got title fights in like the last year or two. Um and like I think that's something big that a lot of guys don't do in this sport, jiu-jitsu or MMA, but in jiu-jitsu, a lot of guys think that just winning is enough. They think if they win that thing that they're going to end up being, um, if they win that next big thing, they're going to just magically become famous. When in reality, like that's not exactly how it's going to work, right? You have to create a following or connect with people, and or like I just did an event 2 weeks ago, and we made sure that, hey, we're gonna do a walkout and have fun and like create these characters, because that's what gets people excited about the event. And dude, it works. Like it makes a big deal. People get excited. Like we did a whole like we didn't cut promos before, but like we did like pictures and all of that to make sure we started like building the characters we were going to be portraying at this like trios event, and like it makes a big difference. So I think that's a pretty big thing that you're touching on there.
I think we're all trying in our own ways. A lot of it's going to be, well, does this work? And as somebody who is a huge pro wrestling fan, I see a lot of athletes who probably didn't have time for it before, now all mysteriously attending these events. I get people who are like, oh, I don't like that. And I go, okay, that's fine. Do whatever you want, man. And then all of a sudden they're at the event like, Raf, oh, I didn't know you were coming. I'm like, first of all, I go to them all. Second of all, like, what are you doing here? And then they'll tell you, like, I got into it. And I go, I think you saw what you can do. And I have this thing. First of all, super happy that you guys are doing that with people, because it is part of my life's work when I'm doing interviews with people is, how do I make you interesting? Like, what's your hook? What makes you different? And I like to think I have an ear for it, but I can also steer an athlete when I'm giving them intel or feedback that's kind of like, yeah, that's not working, dude. No, like this promo does not work. I was a speech and debate coach, so performance is very important to me. And if it rings true to you as a character or you as a person. So like Gordon can be kind of a heel because that's kind of how he reacts. So he's just turned up his personality and he wins, which is currency for heels. If you don't win, you can't really be a heel for too long. Otherwise, like you look at Conor McGregor now, you don't think he's a threat that he was in 2016. So that is part currency. But I do love when athletes start telling me, they're like, I think I'm going to make a heel turn. I was like, you're the biggest baby face there is. You cannot be a bad guy. And I'll even challenge them right up front. I'll be like, cut a heel promo on me. Do it. And if you've ever done comedy or you just have a good sense of what your brand and what you are is, they're not going to say anything that's ever going to insult me. They're not capable of beating me up in that way. They're capable of beating me up in a jiu-jitsu sense, but when it comes to nick at self-esteem from their interpretation, it's not going to happen. So we do a segment on my Patreon called Roast Raf, where, I roast the guys when we do interviews, but I'll let them watch my footage of my competitions, especially the ones where I do something dumb. And I'm intrigued. I don't want to learn. I don't want to become better from them. It's not like inciting them to do a free private for me. It's just like, hey, make fun of this. And it's a good reversal. And sometimes I'm leading them to the joke and they don't even know it. And then they'll be like, wow, Raf, you're like this. And I go, yep. And it's fun. You don't take it seriously. It's just, I know that sweep looked terrible and that I ended up in a bad position. But I like the hunt of hearing them describe it in their way. Or I was just telling them, like, Miha over at Legion did one where he was roasting me. And he's like, dude, he's like, Raf, I feel bad if I were to make fun of you. Is that okay? And I'm like, dude, I don't care. Do it. And he was trying to find the most polite way to be a dick. And I actually found that endearing. So I always tell the guys, I'm like, whoever you are, find a way to connect. So one good example of that is Keith Krikorian being the face of UFC BJJ. He found a joke. He's been running with it. And it's the perfect way of his goofball personality being turned up for the attention. They're doing great on numbers. And he's having fun. Because I feel like at the end of the day, like, dude, we're pajama wrestling. If you take yourself so seriously, this world will sniff you out and make fun of you.
Well, to that point, I feel like the type of person that's attracted to jiu-jitsu, and obviously there's a ton of people that fall under that umbrella, but particularly the ones who become good competitors, they tend to be, well, in my experience, a lot of them tend to be introverted, kind of nerdy, really dedicated to the craft, which means like you have to nerd out on this stuff. You have to watch tutorials. You have to be on the mat nonstop, which generally I feel like people with personalities don't commit that much to what we all do. Of course, there's different types of people out there, but it seems like, and Raf, you tell me, we're on the East Coast, so maybe we're looking at different people, but this archetype of human being might struggle to do what you're describing.
Yes.
Can it be coached, Raf?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? One of these days, I'm just going to tank the podcast and just open up a firm on helping people do this. It gets that back to my speech and debate days, dude, because speech and debate, I could take anybody and make them a pretty decent performer. Even if they didn't have inherent skills, there are things you can teach them. Now, obviously, your amazing talent is always just going to shine through and they don't have to do as much work. But it's the same thing like lifting. Sometimes you're just genetically gifted and you go, dude, how does that guy lift that? I can't get anywhere near that. It's just sometimes genetics, sometimes talent as genes, but everything's coachable. I do feel like the East Coasters have a pretty good sense of busting balls. So that inherently leads to good shit talk, which if you have a match against somebody, maybe makes you want to watch that match a little bit more. In LA, I think, or West Coast, we're a mix between a little too lax and also I love the fact that at LA, I think I do fit that mold. It is hard to get under a skin because it's going to be like, oh, You think I'm trash. Well, I'm going to go to the beach, bro, and I'm going to have a pretty good day. So enjoy your snow and terrible weather, seasonally, of course. And I'll talk to you later, bud.
He just roasted us, Mike. That was a mini roast.
I liked it.
It was a subtle roast, gentlemen.
It was a
it
subtle
was
roast.
testing the waters. You have
It
to
was
make
good.
sure that I'm not
No.
coming in and being a
We
dick
accept it.
guest. But yeah, I
We're-
mean, I also feel like the Australians from Craig, Craig explains it. He's like, he's nothing special because that's what you do. You take the piss out of each other. And that's been fascinatingly funny to me, to have guests who, I have a policy, if I can do it, where I'd like to train with the guests before we do a podcast. And the reason is that it bypasses everything. It gets you to a brotherhood. It gets you to having a commonality. But the real emphasis is, if they trust me on the microphone like I trust them on the mats, I think it's going to make for a good conversation. And it puts us in a way that we can kind of better know one another. And it really makes it so that I can start doing jokes and that they don't get offended and that they feel like they're part of the gym. And I've had a couple guys, when they come to visit our gym, when we roll and then they meet some of my guys, they're like, hey man, I like the culture you have here. And I go, great. Basically, I think what they were saying is, I saw you making fun of your white belts and it was pretty funny. And it's mostly just because I'm like, yeah, that's what I would be doing if you were here or not. It's not for show. It's just that white belt was trying to M&R roll into nothing and it looks stupid. So we should make fun of him.
Yeah, we do a similar thing over here. Well, when we can, when we're not don't have the entire country between us. We try to get on the mats with our guests before, and we find that it does make a big difference. It definitely breaks some barriers down, and it makes it a lot easier to talk to somebody because, yeah, just like you're saying, you have that commonality, and it is easier to make fun of people when you've rolled with them. There's no doubt about that. So you get a little more loose, I guess, is a better way to put it. Which we're doing a good job of, I think.
This. Yeah, no, I mean, I love, I've heard you guys, and I love the fact that we have a mutual friend in Asim, and I'm sure probably other people in the jiu-jitsu community. But a lot of this works best if we just don't take ourselves too seriously. And I've always approached the craft, because I do have a very serious looking face at times. So I think sometimes people are surprised that I'll be so light or sarcastic or silly or funny or goofy, depending on who's around. And I think that my approach has always been, I take the work very seriously, but not myself. So when it comes to producing an event like Subversive, I do get very deathly serious, because the guys might all be goofing around and joking. And I think there's a time and place for it. But if I have a show that's going on in 2 hours, I might put a moratorium on jokes. I'm like, hey, no fun. I hate everything. I want the show to work. And if you guys are spending more time doing the setup to a joke than telling me how we're fixing something, I will murder you. So make sure we go very quickly. But yeah, after then, it's like, all right, you can goof around now, guys. It's all good.
I get that. I would agree. I think I don't know if this is an agreement thing, but I've been toying with this conversation with actually some of my guys at the gym about, does jiu-jitsu take itself too seriously? So that just made me think about it. And like, I don't have an exact answer, but one guy comes from like traditional martial arts, and he's like, well, it's just an inherent thing with martial arts. I'm like, but does it have to be? Can't we just
Right.
we do something that's kind of silly? It's a little silly.
Yeah.
It's fun. Like, why do we need to take it serious all the time? I mean, yeah, obviously there's things that are serious that you need to whatever, but like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think that obviously there's people who don't, you got the Craig Joneses, Keith Krikorian, like you have guys that don't take it too seriously. They're having fun with it and, but also being successful and, they're doing the right things. But do you think that there's an issue with jiu-jitsu taking itself too seriously?
Yes, but it's so much better now because when we first started, and I mean we, meaning myself, and I had a co-host by the name of Kevin Phillips that was the original moniker that most people were introduced to us with Verbal Tap. And dude, our basis was to be the late night comedy of MMA. And at the time, there weren't a ton of MMA, especially not jiu-jitsu podcasts. But we found our niche because I worked at a late night show and I would approach writing jokes about these athletes in that way, where it's not offensive, but we wanted to make sure we were having a good time. And it's not like we were ever really faced with resistance, but there were people who were very raised eyebrow at us kind of demeanor. And I realized at the time, I was like, yo, you guys can have fun. Like, it doesn't have to be this way. I felt like Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack showing up and being like, it's golf. It's silly. Let's goof around. And then you start seeing these other athletes take the charge and take the lead. And dude, I was thinking about this the other day when I saw all these guys who do TikTok now. And when you see these TikToks, you see everybody at a gym going, oh, hey, I'm filming a skit now. Hey, can you film this? I want to do something kind of funny. And dude, sometimes when we would do that at the very beginning, I would tell people and I'd explain the concept and they'd be like, so you're making fun of this? And I'd go, yes. And I always put the emphasis on trying to make myself look silly or dumb or so inadvertently wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like we're having fun. And now there's a whole bunch of young kids who, dude, I don't even know that I have that creativity. They do it on a daily basis. The amount of times I want to make a TikTok like that is very minuscule, but every year we do something, again, the pro wrestling stuff. We created this whole concept called WWE BJJ, and it was to put pro wrestling in jiu-jitsu settings so that you could inherently be a heel. You weren't pretending to be a heel. Like if you wanted to be an asshole in competition, we would ask people to submit videos of them trying to do that. And that stemmed from me when I'm rolling with people, I'll hit a Boston Crab on people. I'll hit a figure four. And I like to hit them on people who are pro wrestling fans because it's better. I don't try to hit it on civilians if they're not fans. But the worst thing you could ever tell me is you can't land that move on me. And I'm like, well, I'm not great at jiu-jitsu, but I know that stuff. And without fail, they'll always laugh when we get it on there. So that whole skit that we would do with it, we had people sending us notes like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, because it's funny. Like, oh, you think this is funny? And I'm like, yeah. Now I see people putting videos of them doing full on like gimmick things. And I go, oh, thank God everybody's so much nicer and fun about it. It just doesn't mean it's eliminated because you'll always have a traditional space that will feel like this is not jokes, guys. This is life or death. And in some situations, it can be very helpful. But if you think about a reason why you want to show up every day to come train, there has to be a hook. And for some people, they don't want to talk. They just want to drill. That's fine. That has a place. But I think there's a happy medium of, hey, man, so we're doing single legs again? Cool. Okay. That sounds fun. Like, how do you find a way to make it fun? We do like, even at my gym, in my shoot jobs, meaning the stuff that I do outside of jiu-jitsu, I help produce and write for some game shows. So a lot of times, since a lot of guys are compulsive gamblers, I'll come up with silly games. So literally, I had the guys do a quintet, and these dudes looked like they wanted to tear each other's face off. And I was like, hey guys, this is a scrimmage against your own teammates. And you pulled off your shirt and screamed at the camera. Like, what are you doing? This is the stupidest thing in the world. And yet, I don't know, I kind of like seeing people just have fun with it.
Raf, I got a two-part question for you because you got me thinking. Your awareness and insight of the professionalism of, like, let's call it the entertainment value of these types of sports, this world of combat sports plus wrestling. Two-part question. first, do you ever think our sport, just we'll say jiu-jitsu, pro grappling, will, oh my God, can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
My phone started spazzing. Don't
we
worry,
can
I'm here.
what your phone does won't affect
My
your
phone's fine. Anyways, do you ever see this sport growing to a level on par with UFC or WWE? And then part two, because I feel like you'll have some fun with this. If you could build an event from scratch, you had unlimited budget, you could just make this the most entertaining thing possible. How would you do it?
Ooh. I hate the first one. I love the second one.
Oh
'Cause the
man, I
first
think I
one
know where
has
you're
a
going.
the first one has a very sad reality of I don't know, but we're trying, man. And you know what? Credit to Craig. I've gotten behind Craig Jones Invitational as I think our premier showcase. I think UFC BJJ can have some positives for the event, but by and large, kind of boring. Great talent, kind of weird to do it the way that they're doing it. I like the taco bowl of it, if you would. It's a pit, but really they're like, it's the bowl. And I go, sure. But as big as UFC is a big stretch because what you're looking at right now with them is I don't know that they have the best people in the world yet. I think they're building slowly but surely. And I've seen some well structured defense from some of the stars being like, but that's how the UFC started. And it was always small and it got bigger. And it's like, right. But you have a distinct advantage now with the UFC. You have a budget where you can get some of the big stars. And if you really do the rabbit hole, these stars are not as expensive as you think they are. So where's all that money going? Probably for promotions, probably for hooking people, probably to get more people to tune in with the marketing and the education that has to go with it. So I'm cautiously optimistic for them to do better things. But Craig Jones Invitational feels like the show that has the most potential to bring in civilians, people who don't normally watch us. And God bless Craig. Him versus Gabby does nothing for me, but it might do something for somebody else. And yet, what they're doing with that is saying, hey, right before the main event, we're going to try and get as many eyeballs for these amazing practitioners so that they can grab your attention. And not this year. This year was kind of a little boring. Day 2 was better, but day 1 was kind of rough. Last year, you had Tackett and Rotolo. That has now become the modern version of if you need to show grappling is exciting, show them that. And before that, I used to say it was Gary Tonin versus Rusamal Polaris. And I said, if you watch this, this is undeniably good. You don't have to be a fan of it. You can appreciate this. I feel like they took that and they ran with it. Now, if you're asking me, what would I do? All right. I kind of have an event, so I don't want to give away too much, but I'll give you the like unlimited budget version because I certainly don't have that with Subversive. All right, I'm doing a super fight between some celebrities. I'm doing my best to knock down on Tom Hardy's door and be like, bro, I see you compete at the IBJJF. What's it going to take? It's not money. I will do the Bane voice 24 hours at your step every single day because that dude competes and I like how he competes. Now, listen, yes, a lot of people are trying to get on this Moneyberg train. I don't think you have to do Moneyberg. I don't think you have to go that way. I think it's been fun. I think Craig was even offering to like lose a match to Moneyberg, and Moneyberg tried to show it as like, look at the lack of credibility he has offering to throw a match for me. And I was like, that doesn't ruin anything for Craig. Craig literally beat up Chelsonen twice in 2 minutes, and there was no reason he had to have a second match with them. We're here for the spectacle, my guy. I would get big LED walls. I would not do as big of a venue as ADCC did for T-Mobile. I think that was a mistake. $2 million in this era for a venue. I don't care what sport you are. Nobody goes bigger. They go smaller. And if they can afford it, they do something else. I do pyro. I like pyro for that. Big LED wall. And I do a 10 card match series. So I think tournaments can be fun, but I think we do like a Supercard format with maybe a 4-man tournament. And if you get a 4-man tournament, you go in one of the lighter divisions. And I think what you do is you have to put up a sizable amount of money to make them do it. And if you do that, you could showcase some stuff. I'm partial to this. We at Combat Jiu-Jitsu do Combat Jiu-Jitsu, and I didn't love it at first, but I found a place for it. Sometimes that gets the people going. You can throw that in there. But I really do think you make a mix of showing the true spectacle of everything we've got and grudge matches for days. Literally, I think the real American freestyle, Michael Chandler's an interesting talent. That's where he shines. I think that's a great venue for him. So I'm not even opposed to a wrestling exhibition match as we start to get some of these guys in here. Just spitballing.
I like it. Do you do any build up with those grudge matches? What's like the pre-production look like?
Man, okay. First
I
of
know
all,
you
I do
got
press
some answers for
conferences.
that.
Yeah, I do press conferences for all the stuff that we do. I like that. But I think we also have to do like a media day. So I think for that media day, you get them both there. You start doing these grudge matches. And you know what's great about this sport that I don't see enough of is, and it kind of harkens back to a little bit of Metamorphs. There's this emphasis on you versus this other guy. But in actuality, there's a whole history of your team versus their team. Why are you not playing upon that even more? I used to love when the Metamorphs teams would get behind the athlete, like build that rivalry. There are deep, deep seated rivalries that people don't get into. And I think educating the public on the rich history of that is really cool because, yeah, sure, this person might be facing this person, but did you know their coach took on their coach, or that their history was that they were a coach against this guy in MMA? I think there's so much drama and dirt in that really could be enriched. And then I think really what you have to do is you got to get the audience educated on these athletes. That I think is the biggest key to building people is the educational aspect. Because most of the time, if you don't have a dog in the fight or you don't know who these guys are, you're like, sounds good. Joe Blow over here. What does he do? Okay, cool. I think the UFC has put a lot of money into Mikey Musumeci, and for better or worse, you always know what he's up to. So I think they've gone all in on him, which is fascinating because they have a rule set that says you can't pull guard, which is why you get him Karate Kid hopping for no reason. So I'd love to see them change that rule for,
Yeah, so we need like a Real Housewives of Jiu-Jitsu constant type of series for people just to get involved in the politics and the history.
You can do that. I have to say, man, I always was pro let's get our version of the Ultimate Fighter. And we would always say this on Verbal Tap. So like 10 years ago, I was saying, we need to get the Ultimate Fighter. We need to get like the Ultimate Grappler. And then Flo did one with Who's Next. And it was a little too produced. It didn't hit the way I wanted it to hit, but I was happy they did it. And then, of course, UFC BJJ did theirs. And I was like, actually, it's not that good. The right talent filmed in like 2 weeks. But there was a moment where they went bowling, and normally they do those like coaches challenges. And, Dana White was on a press conference be like, we're going to spend $8 to $12 million on UFC BJJ. It's going to be a thing. And they go to the bowling alley, and as they do what would normally be the challenge matches between coaches, Mikey's like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to bet $20 for who can get a strike or who will do better. And I was like, $20, bro? Like, bro, some of my white belts will pay $20 if they pass guard, not even UFC base. Like, what are we doing here, man? Like, that bet is so low. I felt, where is that $8 million going? So, yeah, I think there are ways now in modern storytelling. I actually think you're going to see more and more people do their best storytelling on like TikTok and on Instagram Reels. I think that sells more interest than even doing a 30-minute educational program at times.
Well, I think a big thing too that made the Ultimate Fighter work and why the UFC BJJ like Ultimate Grappler thing doesn't is because one, those dudes were off their rocker, most of them. You know, these were like, these guys, and they also locked them in a house full of alcohol. That was a big part of it too. They had
We definitely need alcohol.
unlimited liquor cabinet, a bunch of dudes who were just training and pent up all day, and then they let them loose in a mansion and just leave them there with the camera on. So you had like that mix of like Big Brother, but and then so like these guys are all at each other's throats, but then also I think there's also just a difference in that grapplers are just like too nice.
Yeah.
And too buddy. Like it's just the way that works. So, like that drama doesn't like self propagate like it does with like it did with Ultimate Fighter, at least not the same way, like not as quickly. So I mean, I think that's what the issue
was. You bring up a
was.
good point. This is something that I think I was alluding to, but I didn't explain properly. So, okay. Answer me this question. When the Ultimate Fighter was really hitting and you were watching and it was on Spike TV or you were just getting into it, did you feel on that show those were the best current amateur and early pro prospects in the sport?
I mean, they definitely did a pretty good job of selling that, but like,
okay,
not necessarily, but they did a good job of like pushing that. Yeah.
That was part of maybe the narrative they were pushing, which is we're scouting for the best people possible. But if you're an intro audience, you're not judging it yet. You may not know as much. But as we've gotten older, we're like, yeah, maybe they weren't like the best guys in the world, but they were great characters. In UFC, for UFC BJJ, they casted for the best athletes. So a lot of those guys have great credentials. Andy Varela, Tackett, Keith Krikorian, like all of those guys are studs, amazing at what they do. The one guy who was kind of cast as being a heel is Elijah Carlton. And on that show, they nerfed him from being an actual bad guy. The worst thing he was saying was like, I don't know if he's going to do it. Maybe he won't pass my guard. And I was like, dude, Elijah Carlton has said some raunchy, crazy stuff. And yet, what it told me was Jiu-Jitsu has a problem in that we expect the best people to be booked. We want to see it. If we're going to treat it successfully, we want to see the best versus the best. But the casting process for MMA doesn't require you to see the absolute best athletes, maybe the best characters you can get behind. In Jiu-Jitsu, we have not developed the best characters yet. And I think that will change, but it's a big, big difference in the casting that we're looking at. And I think that's why when you see things like, man, I really want to get behind the show, and then you see it and you go, something's not right. All the beats are there. It's a 30-minute window. There's not a ton of get to know them story time, but everybody's background story was, I train hard and I love my girlfriend. And on a rare occasion, here's my dog.
Do you think that has anything to do with the fact that most of the people watching Jiu-Jitsu are practicing Jiu-Jitsu and they want to look up to these stars who they can like? Whereas, like you said, the Ultimate Fighter, the vast majority of people watching it are not going to train, and they're definitely not going to compete in MMA. So to them, they're just people they can study. So they want that maniac meathead versus we're all watching UFC BJJ. We're watching Craig Jones Invitational, so on and so forth. And we all do this day in, day out. So it's like a different type of market.
It's a good question. I feel that for Jiu-Jitsu, there's also the big risk of a lot of these guys not wanting to kill their brand entirely. And what I mean is they want to be able to go back to their gyms on Monday and still book privates with kids and make their money and their living, because there's not enough money in the sport yet. So I think that's part of the reason why certain people are afraid to have a personality, or certain people are afraid to do X or Y or Z. And you know what's wild is, as big as the UFC is, they still haven't figured it out, because one of their fighters out here in California who took like a last minute fight, they show what's supposed to be this feel good moment of him going back to work on Monday with his construction company. And then I was thinking about it, and somebody in the comment section was right on the money when they go, we're the only professional sport where they have to go to their other job on Monday. And when they have to go to their other job on Monday, they're celebrated and they put out this piece that basically is like, isn't this amazing? He went back to his job. If you had asked anybody in the NFL, even not even a starter, but somebody on the bench, they're not going to another job. That is their job. So that's what the model we have looking forward to is. It's still not perfect. And then for UFC, BJJ, and all this sort of stuff, they're getting paid more, which is incrementally better. And that is good. So I'm a big fan of that. But if you're looking at modeling BJJ after MMA, it has some holes. And I think that's why people are a little more guarded on, I don't want to be full heel. I want to be a TV heel. Well, guess what? Editors don't care what kind of heel you want to be. They're going to cut you a certain way to tell the best story. So I think that's why they're so guarded. And you see, instead of even somebody being like, oh my God, on TV, if you know you're being filmed, you might get real heavy in the, oh my gosh, and take an extra beat to have a reaction that you wouldn't normally have in real life. So those are small little things that I kind of observe, and I don't really blame them for doing what they need to do. I just don't see as much incentive for them to go off too much script or be somebody else.
It makes sense. I mean, $20,000 to compete is not enough to sacrifice your kids' class on Monday because you said some crazy shit on TV.
Yep.
When we were talking about the UFC BJJ TV show, and given what we just discussed, I don't think this is going to work. But if you guys have ever seen the movie The Recruit, you ever seen that? Colin Farrell, he's in the CIA.
Yeah.
Part of the recruitment or onboarding process, there's a scene where Al Pacino takes the young folks to a bar in Virginia and says, you have to leave with a girl. You have to get drunk and you have to go take a girl home. And I was like, now, what if we did that with these UFC BJJ nerds, put them out there and just really pull them out of their comfort zone? Thoughts?
It would take days.
Can I make a specific request?
It would take days.
That it my main requirement here is that it would still have to be older Al Pacino doing it, because I'm actually listening to the Al Pacino audiobook, and I don't remember why I bought it, but I revere him, De Niro, all these guys, like, are idols when we grew up, and it's like, they're in Heat, they're in The Godfathers, they're amazing. But the current Al Pacino, it felt like they actually did it the reverse way you're supposed to write a book. It felt like he just talked out his life and then they wrote the book afterwards. So the way he's telling stories on there, he's got the gravel in his voice, and it's just him being like, oh yeah, that was a good story when we filmed down the street for The Godfather, and then, she was really young and we did this, and I go, oh my God, this is kind of a train wreck, and it's 12 more hours of this, and yet because he's an elder I respect, I have to listen to it all. And I'm just waiting for him to get to certain stories for certain movies. But when you said Al Pacino's doing this, the thought of him going up to Keith Krikorian and be like, hey Keith, you gotta go up to her, okay? She's got a great ass. And then Keith being like, oh, I don't really want to, Mr. Pacino. I'm already in a relationship.
Yeah, I'm just trying to inject a little drama and personality. A total plot twist.
I also like the idea.
You're not wrong.
I would say I also like the concept of Mikey being the one that has to is telling them to do this. Sorry, I was cutting you off a little bit there, but I was like just thinking of like Mikey telling these guys to go and hit on girls at a bar. I think that would be pretty funny too.
Yes, Mikey having to do a talking head about spitting game would probably be the missing element that would get us over the hump. I can tell you this, dude. I like putting civilians in outside situations, but I also love jiu-jitsu people where you don't always expect them. So one of the segments we do for Grappling Hour is I actually try to, if somebody does drink, and I don't force people to drink. I'm a big person that's like, hey, if you don't drink, it's cool. That's fine. I don't care. I didn't drink till I was like 25, so I don't push it. But if I know somebody does enjoy like an IPA or goes to bars, I will take them to a bar to get them out of the setting of, okay, you expect to see them in a gym. And we do a segment where they interview me back. So we write questions in a glass and they can ask me whatever they want. And I ask them whatever they want that's outside of the scope of like training and other stuff. And we've had guys who, one of them put in there, they're like, are you a pancakes or a waffles guy? And we got into it because we both firmly believed what we believed. And hearing him profess his love for pancakes enraged me so much. I was like, dude, clearly it's waffles. And we couldn't get past that. And I thought that's a much better segment than being like, tell me about your jab.
I'm team waffles too, by the way. There's the
Thank God. Oh my.
Yeah, same.
But you know,
Dude.
that long pause in between fucking had me concerned, sir.
It's the grooves, right?
It's-
Get like a pocket of syrup and everybody.
Well, and the
an
crunch
extraordinary
factor,
amount.
the crunch factor, you have more
Mhm.
surface area of crunchy bits, and then but you still have the soft center. It's just way better. It's just way better, and it's less messy.
Educated people on
Yeah.
the other side of this show. Educated people here, people. It's not just people getting coffee. They are well-rounded in their habits for both morning and brunch.
I was trying to find out who this pancake non-believer was, or just the episode number is fine too. We could direct people to it.
I can put a link in the description for you guys.
Put a link, man. But let's talk about the grappling hour too.
Yeah.
You've been
Yeah.
riffing on everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. This was actually one of my homies, and he fought for a local kickboxing organization. And Savage, this is a big boy too, by the way. Like my boy is like 260, 6'4", so we're not even sized up the right way. And it's just me and him sitting down, and he was telling me, he's like, how do you like waffles better than pancakes? And I just told him, I'm like, pockets, as you mentioned. You can break it up easier. I was like, wow, like pancakes, it's like dry. If it's dry, it sucks. You don't have the right distribution of syrup. I always feel like I have to put more and more syrup. It's just a waste. And then he was trying to like tell me something. And I was like, bro, have you ever told somebody that you have waffles and not seen a smile? And he's like, well, and I was like, have you ever had somebody offer you pancakes and you said, I'm not interested? Because I say that. It has to be a certain kind of pancake to register the amount of calories I'm going to ingest. And yeah, we were very heated. And to this day, he's always contrarian about every single thing. So, you know, when Drake versus Kendrick was going on, all of us out in LA are like, oh man, Kendrick's killing it. And he's like, Team Drake, he's got bars. And I was like, he's losing. How are you thinking he's winning? So he's that guy always.
That's funny, man.
Mm.
How about just in case we don't have crossover, give a little rundown of the grappling hour, just kind of the different things that you do on there, the different segments, you know, what the kind of guests, and then, you know, maybe some of the other projects that you've worked on in the past, you know, give people somewhere to look for you a little bit more.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you guys. Grappling Hour started off as a spinoff from Verbal Tap. Verbal Tap, I always said, the magic was me and Kevin. And I noticed I was doing a lot more coverage on my own because we were in different states. Kevin at the time was in Denver. I was in LA. And I just recognized with all the stuff that was happening in LA for jiu-jitsu, like EBIs or, you know, for a while, even like, was it Five Grappling and other big organizations, IBJJF stuff all the time. I would go out there and cover it myself. And I just remembered saying like, hey, are you cool with me doing that as its own thing? Because we started getting so many guests in grappling that I said, it's too much show for Verbal Tap. And he's like, absolutely. So go do your thing. So Verbal Tap gave way to Grappling Hour. And Grappling Hour was just my way of trying to do something where, similar to what Ariel Helwani does, is that if there's a big event, you should see them on my show, probably within the next week. And we were doing it live all the time. And when COVID hit, we could book people, but there were less events. And what I realized is we're trying to train the athletes with media training. Like, hey, if you win, get used to being interviewed the next week. Like, if Ariel Helwani called you right now, would you tell him no? And it works in certain ways, but I get a lot of like, oh yeah, dude, I planned a trip. I can't be on a phone for 30 minutes. And you're like, okay, that's no problem. When are you free? In 2 months. And I go, bro, people are going to forget you won something in 2 months. So we've now adjusted it where we do different experiences. So the usual one is 1 hour interviews with your favorite stars. So there are people you should know and people you may not know. And I try to do 1-for-1. So one big guest, your Gary Tonins, your Craig Jones, they are supplemented the next week by somebody maybe you don't know. Sometimes local guys who really are on the come up, who I really think are going to be good and who oddly do find their way into the UFC or UFC BJJ. So that's one experience. Those are interviews. That also is spun off to the Bullpen, which is our weekly topical news show. And it's a collaboration between myself and a guy named Tim Freeman, who's the other resident old guy in jiu-jitsu. Tim has been doing jiu-jitsu podcasts as long as I have. And I think we're the longest tenured hosts. So I would dare somebody to go look up something different. But I think people have better things to do with their time. So just trust me. Yeah, Tim's great. We basically do a pardon the interruption style format, 8 topics every week. We go through them. We talk about the big news, and we also do the pre and post show for the PGF. We've done it for Subversive. I was interested, but I don't have the money. Yeah, so we're trying to advance that as much as we can in that way. And then the other segments we do, like Roast Raf, people roast my competition footage. We do a segment called Tape Study where we just watch tape footage with the athletes and ask them questions about how they won, whether it's in fighting, kickboxing, MMA. We just try to really get to know what they do better. And then just a lot of random stuff that we come up with. There's also a segment we do called the Grappling Hour Challenge where we give somebody a submission with on a card. So they pick it out like of a deck of cards and they have 2 minutes to hit that submission on me. And the conceit is I get to make fun of them. So one of the last big people we had doing that was Chris Wojcik. And I got to make fun of Chris Wojcik. And he was too busy trying to get a submission on me. So it really does work where he can't even think about it. I think I was even asking him, I was like, hey man, how's your book going? And he's like, it's pretty good. As he's like trying to go to mount and finish like an armbar or something. And I was like, actually, I hear Joseph Chen's about to hit a seminar at the same academy. He's like, that's awesome. And I was like, it'll probably be better than yours. And he doesn't take the bait. And he just goes, I bet it would be. And then meanwhile, he lost the position while trying to respond to me. And I was like, haha, sucker. So Wojcik is a good time. I really like him. But yeah, those are like a taste of it. And then we do like Fight Companions where we watch it live. We did one for ADCC. And really what it looks like is like I'm hosting a telethon for far too many hours, but we do it kind of like red zone coverage where we'll tell people what mats they need to stay on top of. Because if you ever watch ADCC trials, you might have one of your homies on that and may have no clue when they go up. But we are trying to tell people like, hey, mat 1, this person's going on right now. Mat 3, this person's going on. Oh shit, that's a great match. You want to skip on over to mat 8 because there's a Kimura that's going to happen there. So that's like a little bit of a scope of the different types of shows and content that we produce.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It is. But you know what it is, dude? I want to do this more as my gig forever. And as the sport grows, every year or two, I always see something new that we want to do. Because I say, oh, somebody doesn't do that. Or, oh, yeah, everybody does an interview now. Or like, dude, the Simple Man guys have a podcast. Okay. And at first I was like, what are they going to do? And I see them platforming and interviewing guys. And I say, yeah, they're the big guys, but I think in time they'll be platforming newer people. And that's really important to me. I think anybody can interview a big name. The real key is how do you get to know somebody entirely new? And a lot of athletes, I think, don't always take the time to properly make the interview about the other person. So what I've seen with them is they've made goofy fun, and I think that has helped a lot. But I'm always looking at the shows that platform new people, like constantly. So I think there are a handful, I mean, way more now than were back then, but it is so refreshing to see names that I always tell people I'm usually the first person to book a certain person. Like I'm usually their first interview. So I can't prove I'm Gordon's first interview, but it was definitely there when he was stumbling a lot more and didn't know how to use his words too well. Still doesn't, but at least he's louder now.
Yeah, I was gonna. We'll let you have that one. I'm not gonna. We're not gonna challenge you on it. You can be Gordon's first interview. I think that works for me. I'm not gonna look it up, I guess is what I'm saying. Nor should anybody.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. um, but I think we're kind of coming up on time. Do you have anything else before but we can keep rolling for a little bit longer, but otherwise, where can people find you, sir? How can they follow you, follow your show, check out what you have coming up or going on?
Absolutely. You guys can follow me at Grappling Hour on all major platforms. You can find me at patreon.com/grappling hour. On there specifically, you can see my interviews 30 days before everybody else. And there's also extra bonus content that doesn't go out to everybody else. And what I like to tell people about this is listen, I try to give away a lot of stuff for free. There's a lot of content that we do for free. But a big thing for us is I always hope that people will support the shows that are trying to give shine to other people. Because if you think it's hard to be an athlete in this sport, imagine what it's like to be a person covering those athletes. So every time an athlete tries to bitch at me and they're like, man, this doesn't pay. And I was like, mm-hmm. And you think this does. And they're always like, no, I mean, it's different. I don't know. We're in the same boat together, guy. So maybe don't preach to the choir. Me. And if we work together, I think there are stronger possibilities for us to always expand. So that's why I think creativity is key. It's always like anytime you feel like there's a roadblock in this industry or this sport, you just got to come up with a better hook. You got to come up with a better creative vision. And we've always been pretty lucky that a lot of the guys want to play. And so if I always have like a comedy bit, before it took a while to explain it to somebody and be like, all right, we want to do this and this. Now we have a lot more people who want to play. Like if I say, hey, make fun of me, they're like, okay, done. Easy. Bet, fam. So we've been lucky on that. So patreon.com/grappling hour. Get some Grappling Hour merch. Support the show. It buys all my fancy equipment, y'all. These microphones and as you guys know, all the stuff that you're paying for don't pay for itself. So if you're looking at a nice Rodecaster Pro to make the sound pretty, you better get some people who believe in the vision and support that. And you guys can do that. RafEsparza.com/merch. But yeah, every social media platform at Grappling Hour on everything. We try to make it fun and hopefully you meet some new voices and make some new friends or at least get interested to see their fights or their matches. And one thing that we like to do too, we're keeping notes and tabs on all these guys who have new organizations or new promotions. We just talked to this group called Thug Trials, and I noticed them because I liked their promos. I liked the way that they were doing their fight announcements. It felt like little Quentin Tarantino movies, real lo-fi. And I said, hey, let's talk. And I liked giving them some shine because I want the sport to succeed, and I want to always share thoughts and notes with one another. So a lot of times people will get a note from me unsolicited that just as a producer says, hey, have you thought about this? Or this is kind of cheap, but you can do it for the same price for this. And I like to think that's part of the brotherhood, which is if we all lift this up, then we will get closer to seeing it on actual television as opposed to, hey guys, stream this on this app that you will never use.
You're here for that. So definitely, guys, go out and support the Grappling Hour. Go and drop some money in his Patreon bucket, and follow him along on all of his social media, and listen to the show, especially. And other ways you can support shows. including ours, is also rating and reviewing the show. I know that makes a big deal, makes a big difference as well. Gets the shows in front of more people. So do that with his show. Also do it with ours. 5 stars for both of them. 5 stars all around, every episode, every platform. Do that. So, but yeah, thank you again, Raf, for coming on the show. That's Raf Esparza of the Grappling Hour. And thank you guys for listening. Bye.